Today's edition of Mac Voices is supported by MacVoices Magazine, our free Flipboard magazine that brings you some of the best Mac, iPhone, and iPad productivity tips on the web. High in signal, low in noise, just like MacVoices, MacVoices Magazine includes information on how you can get more out of your Apple technology. Subscribe at macvoices.com/magazine or search for MacVoices Magazine on Flipboard. Welcome to Mac Voices. This is the talk of the Apple community. I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, there's a new conference coming that I'm very excited about, and I'm especially excited to have the organizers of this conference here. And I think there are a couple guys you probably know. The conference is called the Apple Market Forum. And up first is Mr. Dave Hamilton. Dave, welcome.
Thanks, Chuck. It's a pleasure to be back. It's been too long, man.
It's been way too long. It's been way too long. But I think you must have been holding out on me just to come and do something big like this.
Well, yeah, that's what I do.
Is that okay? Is that it? And another face that I know everyone will recognize, and I'm delighted to have back on the show, especially when we're talking about yet another conference, Mr. Paul Kent. Paul,
hi, Chuck.
Great to have you, man. Good to see you.
Thanks. Yeah, I think it's probably been longer for me than for Dave, right?
I believe so. You've turned into quite the rock star.
I spent a little time focusing on music, but in reality, I never stopped thinking about what I wanted to do in the Apple community after I stopped doing Macworld. So, music kind of took me about a year to kind of get that out of my system or into my system, and now we're talking about something pretty cool.
Well, that's great. That's great. It's a delight. You just can't get away from the Mac space, right?
I never wanted to get away from the Mac space.
Well, guys, I'm going to just do sort of a what, where, when, how, why on Apple Market Forum. So I'll let you all start off. What is the Apple Market Forum?
Dave?
Sure. Well, there's been a conversation that's sort of been brewing over the last year. It's less clear now for people that are running their businesses based on Apple products, and it doesn't matter what size business, small, medium, huge, right? It's become less clear what the future looks like for professionals doing things with Apple, right? It used to be 5 years ago you could see a path. Now that path is different, and so there's been a conversation brewing. What does this mean? What can those of us that run our businesses on Apple, what can we do better? What does the future look like? And that's the conversation that we're looking to have, and we're going to have with Apple Market Forum.
Yeah, if you go back to the end of the year, there were a lot of prognostications again, or actually extrapolations. People pontificating what they thought was going on with Apple, whether it was critique or acceptance of Apple's path and operating systems, or software, or their mix of products, or those types of things. And it seems like that critique or those observations have pivoted a little bit. And it dawned on me that interpreting Apple is a different beast now than it was a while ago. I mean, certainly since Macworld ended, there's been a kind of a shift in the emphasis of tight scrutiny of how to work with Apple. And so I thought, and I brought to Dave this idea that there's a need for people who live and work in the Apple ecosystem to get together and understand how to interpret. I mean, Apple is still nominally the same beast in terms of the amount of public information they put out for you to kind of officially grok, but in terms of like extracting. And so I think it's important for the ecosystem to be together. I mean, it was kind of that was the core of what made Macworld an interesting place, is the ecosystem. And the ecosystem are people who advise Apple in interesting ways in corporate environments, advise about Apple purchasing. So you work in a big Fortune 500 company, and your company makes significant investments in Apple. You're getting some information from Apple, and I would posit that that's kind of the party line. And then your job is probably to kind of interpret, where does Apple stand competitively? Where is Apple going with cloud? Where is Apple going with operating system? Where is Apple going with hardware mix? Where is Apple going with social? All these types of things you probably have to advise your company on. And so you get Apple's perspective, and then you get some written perspectives, right? But the art and science of extracting who Apple is and where they're going, I think is worthy of a really, really interesting conversation.
This is going to be an interesting conversation because it does feel like there have been some major changes since Macworld was last engaged. And Apple seems to be doubling down so much on the iOS devices, or that's the perception. It's one of my pet peeves that we don't know for sure because none of us work inside Apple. That's the perception.
That's the conversation.
Has that been the impetus for this? That the Mac may not be progressing like it did?
Certainly. Oh, go ahead.
I wouldn't say it's the impetus for it. It's not. This is not a conversation about Mac versus iOS and internal Apple resources or something like that. That's not the crux of this. It's what do we know? What can we interpret? What is kind of like educated commentary on this? And so we don't know. Again, this is kind of why the conversation is so interesting. Is that are you ready to make a huge investment in Macs? Well, here's what we can interpolate from that. What interesting is now What interesting is now happening that is enabling iOS devices to do things that Macs could do before? That would be a conversation. One of the things that Dave has been a great advocate for in this designing the agenda for this is there are still tools out there that make being an Apple user, be it desktop or be it mobile or or sitting on your couch on an iPad, that make that experience still unique. And so what part of the agenda building of this is going out and finding those interesting tools that make an Apple experience a uniquely satisfying and productive experience. So it's really much bigger than just Mac versus iOS.
That's one of the questions, obviously one of the questions that's been asked over the last year, and more, perhaps even more than the last year. And clearly, Apple has a much greater focus on consumers, or it seems like they have a much greater focus on consumers now than even 5 years ago in terms of that kind of stuff. But to Paul's point, that's not the only thing happening. And so this conversation is a holistic thing. And I see this as a very positive conversation. It has come up in various lights, and some of those have been negative. But I see no reason that it has to be a negative thing at all. In fact, I see it, again, as very positive. Like, okay, here's the world we live in. Now let's do it. Let's talk about how we're all going to thrive and the best ways to thrive. And I can learn something from you, and you can learn something from me. And like, that's the beauty of what we're doing here.
Yeah, what Dave said is absolutely accurate. This is a place of advocation. We are advocating for the ecosystem, how to make them more successful. And, maybe I could just drill down on it a little bit. I'd mentioned someone who is a brand champion in a large company would be a great target to attend this. Someone who's an analyst, someone who's in the media world who wants to think more about the space that they live and that they advise their readers on. Consultants, VARs, resellers, all of these people who have a constituency within this broader umbrella called the Apple ecosystem, that's who we're designing this content for. And, the good things that happen, and again, we're starting out very conservatively. Like, this is a one-day, about 350-person event that we want to host, right? It's not a big expo. There may be some product demonstration components to it, but mostly what we want to do is we want to get the core constituents to come together. And then once we have that, we feel there's a lot of good things that can grow from it, and, get it to a manageable size that is, a realistic size to continue to serve the audience. But this isn't a power user event. It's not a user event. It's not a developer specifically event, although, people who own developer organizations, you own a company that makes a product in this world, and you want to think and talk more about where the world is going. You'd be a good person to attend this event. So I'd add that to the audience list as well. But that, I think what Dave said is very important. This is not a negative conversation. This is a conversation about the realities of our world. Where does Apple stack up competitively in mobile? Google has phones, Samsung has phones, right? And are phones the only part of the mobile conversation? They also have tablets, right? And what is the relationship? I had a great conversation with a well-known analyst in our space who he wants to come and talk about the science, the data behind that they've discovered about why product mix, laptop, tablet, and phone device, that there is a science to understanding what corporations need from that mix of, and who's best positioned across all three of them and why that's important. And so that, those are the types of conversations that we'll have.
I want to attend that session, by the way.
You will.
I know. I intend to.
Paul, you used an interesting phrase that you're talking about what Dave is bringing to this, and that is the Apple experience. Has the Apple experience, you think, changed that much? And you notice I'm not saying Mac or iPhone, but the Apple experience. Has it really changed that much, or have we just seen a natural evolution of it?
Well, I mean, evolution is change, right, Chuck? So I think the answer is yes to both. But it's been a guided evolution, right? If you rewind 10 years ago, the iPhone was like this new thing, and now it literally has changed our lives. So, that's evolution, but it didn't happen accidentally. Apple very much targeted, okay, here's this thing that we can build. And I'm certain that Apple didn't know all of the implications of what this was going to happen. What this is going to have. They didn't even plan for an app store out of the gate, right?
Yeah.
No, so there's parts of this that are sort of natural evolution, but very much seeded by decisions that Apple has made, both in terms of products to announce and products not to release or announce, right? So it's an evolution that's happened, but it's clear that Apple has made some choices. What those choices communicate to people living in this market, that's sort of the conversation that we're going to have at this event, because it's not entirely clear what does that mean for me that ran a company on Apple computers 20 years ago, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, and now, and hopefully 5, 15, 20 years down the road.
For sure.
Right? So this is a path that we've all been on. But I would say the next 10 years are going to be very different than the last 10. And so let's talk about that, and let's make sure that we as users, and I say users in the sense of people that need to rely on these devices and this ecosystem to run our businesses, what can we do to make sure that we're well leveraged going forward?
And Dave's answer is actually part and parcel to why the value that our partnership brings to putting this on. So Dave has lived on the front lines of this with Mac Observer and Mac Geek Gab, talking to users on a very granular basis, and it's incredibly valuable. But it's valuable in another way, in that the legacy of understanding where Apple's been is part of the story. But we are both very wide-eyed that there are new classes of users, new classes of executives who have entered the Apple ecosystem at a totally different entrance point. That is a perspective that we need. So legacy is important to some degree, but opening our eyes to people who look at Apple differently, who Apple sells to differently, who Apple addresses differently. This is part of the value proposition of what the event is. Legacy is important and informing, but there's so much to learn about things that have happened. I'd say, let's put a date on it. Let's put a date on it. Since Tim took over the company, moving forward, is a different incarnation of Apple. The organization has adapted to a different leadership style, and they're doing things differently, and that's an important thing. So the value of how it used to run, Steve and before Steve, is one point of informing the conversation. But really, I would say, would you agree that we could use the point of where Tim has took over the company and has been running the company as a major inflection point of understanding Apple?
Dave, yeah, I would definitely think so, and I think there's also something to be said for the fact that all of these devices have continued to get more powerful. When iOS first came out, okay, most of the apps were little one-trick ponies. They could do one thing and that was it. Now they're some pretty full-fledged productivity apps, and the interesting thing is that with the iPhone being, I'm not quite sure ubiquitous is the best term, but it's certainly widespread, and it's widespread among a lot of business people for some very good reasons.
Yeah, the platforms are one point of the conversation, but again, where is Apple with security, and what is their brand promise with security, and are they living up to that brand promise with security? Mobile, social, operating systems. I mean, all of these kind of sub disciplines that make up a modern a computer company seems to be a way underselling what we're trying to talk about here. But the game has changed so dramatically as to how you compete and how you play. Apple's incredibly strong in some of them. They're competitive they're feature competitive in others, and they're clearly not emphasizing other things. And what do we need to learn about that? I think that's where the value of what this event will help people to think about.
Chuck, I will speak about the three of us here, but I'm sure there's at least a segment of your audience that's like us, that grew up with Apple being the underdog. To Paul's point before, there are a lot of people out there buying it, like with influential positions at companies, deciding whether or not to buy Apple products, that have no memory, recollection, or experience at all of Apple being anything but the prized player in the in this market. So it is there is a new conversation that is happening, and we kind of want to focus that and lead it forward, and shepherd it forward, I think is probably the best term I can use, because the conversation's happening anyway. We're just going to focus it together in a way that you can come and for one day get a packed amount of value out of being in this space, physical space, with these people all looking to solve similar problems, and perhaps some of them have even solved these problems that you need to solve, and now you've got some networking that you can do and really work that system and have an infrastructure that informs you going forward.
And that networking thing is really important. That's actually one of the things that those of us who live this kind of legacy experience, this group, the core group that we anticipate is definitely going to come, because they know Dave and I. These are great people to start conversations. So like in any event, there's what we'll put on stage, there's the interaction between the stage and the audience, but then there's those hallway conversations, the lunch conversations, the dinner conversations. We're going to try and go pretty late into the night on this and try and really extend it. But it's all about reconnecting people. One of the most remarkable parts about the Macworld experience was how accepting the Apple expert community was in bringing new people into the fold and sharing their expertise. I mean, I've said this for many, many years, that one of the greatest things about Macworld was walking and seeing people sitting in a circle on a carpet in the hallway or in the lobby of a convention center, showing code, solving problems, not code, but maybe an Excel macro or a FileMaker script or something like that. That was kind of me. A large part of the magic is that sharing economy, so to say, to use that term in a different way. So, that's what I'm really looking forward to. It was an amazing run with Macworld to be able to have an event where the iPhone was introduced and to meet hundreds, if not thousands, of exhibitors who are trying to make a difference in the market. But the core of that experience to me was always that, remember, even when I was running the whole event, I still ran the conference part of it myself. And so being in touch with those people who are trying to interpret, share, interpolate what was going on with the different tools, those people were a remarkable place to start a professional career. And that's, when I was even all the way back to my Mactivity days, those are the people who I think gave me the inspiration to want to continue to bring people together. And so this is just the next incarnation of that. I've got a lot of experience. Dave's got a lot of experience. Dave lives it every day. I am now living it every day again after a brief break to play some music. And so, but we're really excited. We're going to start small. I'll share. We're going to announce the date when we go live with the agenda. So Dave and I are working hard now at recruiting speakers. And, some of this is our ideas that we want to find the right speaker to speak about what we want. Some of this are people pushing very cool ideas to us. Early August in Silicon Valley. The date will go live. Right now, we've done like announcements and press releases and some directed emails to our customer lists that say hold the date. But because it's only 350 max-ish people, we're starting at a priority list. And so people can sign up now and just get on the list. And that means we'll send you an email as soon as we go open for registration. I think there'll be more demand than that for this first event, I'd like to think. But that's the path that we're on. So the event, again, will be in early August in Silicon Valley. Great place for it. A lot of interesting constituents can make it there that we want to participate. So I think that's really important. And right now, we want people to get on that priority list so we can let you know about the tickets when they go on sale. www.applemarketforum.com.
Great. So this means that folks need to get on that priority list now, but there will be more live, and that's when the agenda will will be talked about. So I'm not even going to ask you guys about that because we're just way too early in this process.
You've heard some of it, Chuck. We've shared a little bit here. Yeah.
Okay. Well, but right now the whole idea is to get the word out, let people know this is happening, and this is where they go to get the information. So
that's it.
Yeah. I hope you're going to be there, Chuck.
You can count on it, Paul. You can count on it. I'm looking forward to it.
That's what I'm talking about. Okay,
so we have the website. Are there any social media accounts we should point to other than your individual stuff, or?
Well, we have AMF Conf on Twitter right now that's got limited content because, frankly, we aren't announcing a whole lot yet. We're still working on that. But if you have any questions for us, if you have any ideas for us, absolutely, that's one place you can find us. But also, I'm Dave Hamilton on Twitter. He's Paul Kent on Twitter. Please come and find us. We're having conversations with people about this every day. And if you have an idea or even just a question, we'd love to have that conversation with you too.
As we said, we started this by let's have a conversation, and that's what we want it to be.
Great. Gentlemen, thank you so much. I really appreciate the time. I can't wait to see both of you. This is going to be like Old Home Week, but with a whole new flavor.
We're getting together for new time's sake, Chuck.
Yes,
I like that.
That's well said. That. For new time's sake. Okay, great. Dave Hamilton, Paul Kent, Apple Market Forum guys. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much.
Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is Mac Voices. This is another conference you got to sign up for, folks, or at least to find out what all's going on, because with these two behind it, it's got to be good. Until the next time, and as always, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for links, show notes, to subscribe, to connect with Chuck on Twitter, Google+, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and the Mac Voices blog. Subscribe to our weekly newsletter, the Mac Voices Dispatch, to stay up to date on all the latest Mac Voices news from our front page or at macvoices.com/newsletter. Do more with your Apple tech by subscribing to the free Mac Voices magazine on Flipboard by visiting macvoices.com/magazine. Advertising and sponsorships handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.